This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
South Africans gearing up for a general election. Is the political dominance of the ruling African National Congress at risk? Over 1 million of the Earth's species being pushed towards extinction due to human activities. And emerging scientists from 18 African countries tour China's top universities and industrial parks. Hello and welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. We'll bring you the details on those stories and others in just a moment, but first, Ramadan with the day's business headlines. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. Kenya's biggest bank by assets has its eyes set on banks in Rwanda and the DRC. And South African Airways will soon be flying directly from Joburg all the way to Guangzhou. Details on those stories and lots more coming your way in a bit. But first, the latest in current affairs with Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. But before we bring you those stories, let's start with some distressing developments from West Africa. A fuel tanker lorry overturned and exploded near the airport in Niger's capital, Niamey. From the Sunday evening tragedy, at least 55 people are reported dead and 37 others injured. Many of the victims had gathered to collect fuel after the vehicle overturned close to railway tracks as it tried to park. Niger has been trying to stamp out fuel smuggling from neighboring Nigeria. Nigeria, a major oil producer, has seen similar deadly accidents and explosions in the past when people try to steal fuel from oil pipelines. Let's now turn our focus to South Africa, where a special voting session is already underway ahead of the main election on Wednesday. Those taking part are required to apply in advance to participate in the process. CGTN's Robert Nagila, who is in Durban, explains further.
At the City Hall in Durban, the third most populous city in South Africa, special voting is underway ahead of the main election on Wednesday. Local councillor Ntando Kuzwaya is among the close to 1 million voters participating in the exercise. The special vote allows a registered voter unable to vote at their voting station on election day to vote ahead of the main polls. Those taking part have to apply well in advance.
It was very easy. It took less than a minute. The whole thing is done. It's so seamless. As soon as they find you on the voters roll, you then move over to get your ID stamped, and then you are given that ballot, a very long ballot. It's the longest I've seen in my life.
The special vote also gave the Electoral Commission a chance to test the process ahead of the main voting day on Wednesday.
First voter arrived at 9 and was able to vote. Up until now, we've voted about 12 people. We're expecting 43 people who are going to come and vote.
The process will conclude on Tuesday evening. On Wednesday, close to 27 million registered voters are expected to vote in more than 22,000 polling stations across the country. The day has been declared a public holiday. A heightened security presence is already visible at all polling stations. The Electoral Commission says it expects about 770,000 special voters to cast their votes between Monday and Tuesday, and is urging political parties not to engage in any activities that may disrupt the process. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Durban, South Africa.
The last projections of the South African polls have been released. This follows the final political party rallies held over the weekend. Angelo Coppola has more.
While tens of thousands of party faithful turned out to show support for their political parties, pollsters have been canvassing voters across the country. The Institute of Race Relations released their projections after canvassing some 2,000 voters last week.
The ANC on 54% on a lower turnout. We put the DA on 23% on a lower turnout and the EFF on 14% on a lower turnout. There is some fluidity between the ANC and the EFF. They've been fighting up and down a bit over the course of the week. But those seem to be the general kind of bands in which they're operating in.
The ruling party hasn't done itself any favours, despite the positive sentiment created when Cyril Ramaphosa was made president.
The idea of Cyril Ramaphosa and this idea of hope and renewal that he brings to the ANC and to the electorate is founded on two core values. The one is good governance, and the other one is a tough stance against corruption. Load shedding undermined this idea of good governance, and the Zondo Commission has undermined this idea of a tough stance on corruption. And given that those are really the only things that the ANC has to offer this election, they both did huge damage to its prospects.
Economists are anxious about the way voters will vote given the damage done.
So I'm very nervous about it, almost whichever way we come out, that we're not going to see anything positive come from it, that it's not a hung balance, but it's very close to a balance where there will be little progress in growing the economy, in providing the wherewithal, the capital, the abilities, the access to skills and so on. All this is probably going to be delayed even further.
Economists are also split on what impact the final vote tally will mean for investment flows into South Africa.
I don't think there's enough there to encourage the capitalists of the world to say, yes, we will support you. I think they're more likely to say, we'll see how you get on, and that's going to be a very slow progress.
Political polling is not an exact science, and the economic implications of the way the country votes will be decided by the 9th or 10th of May. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And earlier we spoke to CGTN's Robert Nagila in Durban to find out the status of preparations ahead of South Africa's elections.
We're talking about close to 27 million registered voters. 55% of that number make up the female vote, an indication of just how important that vote will be in this particular poll. Now, you're looking at about 22,000, rather close to 23,000 polling stations scattered across the entire country. The Electoral Commission says that it is as ready as it will ever be. There's a heightened security presence across the entire country. And just today, the voting, there's something that they call a special vote. Now, this is for those who will be unable to go and vote in the polling stations where they registered. So they're allowed to vote today, Monday, and tomorrow, the eve before the election itself. That number expected to be close to 800,000 people voting in these 2 days. Now, the Electoral Commission also urging political parties to urge their supporters not to intimidate those who are going to vote, and to urge their supporters also to turn up for the voting exercise. So as far as they are concerned, really, they say that they are absolutely prepared for this exercise. From what we saw today here in Durban when we visited the City Hall during this special voting exercise, it's very well organized. Whether this can translate to Wednesday, when majority of the 26 or 27 million odd registered voters will turn up to vote, remains to be seen.
Meanwhile, South Africans have been sharing their expectations about the upcoming general election. Some analysts say the vote may test whether the ruling African National Congress still commands a popularity. CGTN's Lolela Lupuwama has more on South Africa's elections.
Wednesday's vote comes 25 years since South Africa's first democratic election, which marked the end of apartheid. President Cyril Ramaphosa took office last year when Jacob Zuma was forced to relinquish power by the ANC. The ruling party has been plagued by failure to resolve deepening poverty, corruption and inequality.
So they need to start pulling out all the corruption, and something needs to get done about that, because then we'll actually have money in the country to sort the rest of the problems out.
Provincial elections are expected to measure ANC fortunes. The ruling party is in close tussle with the Democratic Alliance for control of the Gauteng province, where the economic hub lies, as well as the capital city, Pretoria.
It's important to actually have your say, instead of just sitting back and just saying, okay, but I want this to change, but I want that to change, but you don't actually make that effort to actually go to the polls and actually vote.
I want to see South Africa being a country of equity. I want to see a country of democracy as they have put it on. I want to see free education. I want to see everyone have an opportunity to be something great, not just be restricted because of the color of your skin.
Preliminary results are expected on Thursday, with an official winner to be declared on Saturday. The new president will then be sworn in on May 25th. Hlanela Lupuwana, CGTN.
Well, policy researcher Sarah Gon shared with us her views on South Africa's political climate, electorate expectations and possible outcomes of the polls.
Basically, it seems like it's turning out to be a very, very interesting election for exactly the reasons you point out. We've predicted in a poll done literally on the 4th of May that the ANC would get in the region of about 55%, which would be a drop from its position in the 60s. But there's a very real possibility that it may lose the majority in Gauteng, which is the richest province in South Africa, and then we would have a lot of talk about coalitions. And it also looks like it may be under some threat in KwaZulu-Natal, which is a Zulu province and has been a stronghold for the ANC for the last few years, certainly while former President Jacob Zuma was in charge. I think that's not going to be. There are going to be no easy wins. Even where they do comfortably, they're under pressure in a way they have never been before. And we've talked for years about 2025 being the election that the ANC loses. This election seems to be, to some extent, indicating that that is a possibility. It will still be in charge, but there's much more pressure coming up from the bigger opposition parties. I think for the first time since the ANC came into power in 1994, I would describe the situation as fluid. And there are a lot of areas that are under contestation. We believe, the Institute, we carried out one of a series of polls on the 4th of May, indicating that the ANC would go below 60, probably to 55. The EFF would probably go up to between 12 and 14%, and the Democratic Alliance would go up about from 22 to 24. The interesting thing is, however, that the ANC may actually lose the majority in Gauteng, which has both Johannesburg and Pretoria in it, and is essentially the financial hub of the country. So it's the richest province. And in that case, we'll be looking at coalition government for sure.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa wants men to accord women the honor they deserve. Ramaphosa describes the abuse of women as a cancer. CGTN's Elisa Njamela has more.
Domestic and sexual violence against women and children remains a major cause for concern here in South Africa. A 2018 report by Statistics South Africa shows that 1 in 5 women has experienced physical violence. Rape and murder rates are also worryingly high, and conviction rates remain low, and most cases of domestic violence and sexual abuse go unreported. President Cyril Ramaphosa has made this issue one of government's priorities. He's made a call to all South African men to play their part, a call that has been echoed by many.
Judiciary must begin to implement harsher sentences. Those who have killed must get life imprisonment, and we must definitely do that. And we're appealing to men outside there that they must come and help us. It's not the Women's League fight, it's a societal fight. Men who are progressive, they must come and join us and lead us in the fight of violence against women and children.
Some men organizations agree. They believe that the focus needs to be on the abuser and not the abused.
We can turn the situation around. We can stand up and speak against gender-based violence. I don't care if you've ever laid a hand on a woman or not. For the fact that you are not standing up and saying something about it, you are equally responsible. And in order for us to change this country around, it takes me and you.
Communities are also urged to play their part to condemn violence against women and children and ensure that perpetrators are brought to justice.
We've seen prosecuting authority coming on board. We also have judges who are also raising their own concerns around justice to women. So it's the advantage where we are now, it's that everyone is ready to do things differently in ensuring that we bring justice and we also bring safety to our women and the vulnerables in our country.
The scourge of violence against women and children has also been made a political issue. As politicians continue crisscrossing the country, trying to convince eligible voters to choose their parties, one of the major promises they've been making is that they will work tirelessly to eradicate the scourge of women abuse in this country, and that they will introduce stringent laws to deal with this. Many activists agree that recently there's been a strong show of political will, something that has been lacking in the past. Perhaps this will make a difference in ending this plague. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. Over 1 million of the Earth's species being pushed towards extinction due to human activities. And the major infrastructural project that will help link the Sinai region with the rest of Egypt.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's turn to a UN report that is raising serious concerns about environmental preservation. The chairman of a United Nations group studying human impact on the world's biodiversity says that a behavioral change is necessary to protect many of the Earth's iconic species from extinction. The UN's global report warns that over 1 million of the Earth's species are being pushed towards extinction by man-made pollution, deforestation and climate change.
Nature is in more trouble now than at any other point in human history, with extinction looming for over 1 million species of plants and animals. In the United Nations' first comprehensive report on biodiversity, the blame is put squarely on humans. But it's not too late to fix the problem.
Business as usual is a disaster. We're going to continue to change the climate. We're going to continue to lose biodiversity. But we can have a more sustainable future if we choose the right policies, the right technologies. If we change our behaviour, we can have a much more sustainable future for our children and grandchildren.
The report is the result of discussions between scientists and governments about climate change, habitat loss, and the impact of invasive plants and animals. More than 500,000 species on land have insufficient habitat for long-term survival. And oceans are not better off.
Well, to protect the coral reefs, one has to reduce land-based pollution, often due to agriculture, basically pesticides, insecticides, other pollution flowing into the ocean coastal zone off the land. One has to really make sure one does not have overfishing in these areas. We've got to make sure that when you have ecotourism, people don't touch the coral reef systems. And of course, we have to address climate change. If we don't slow down and limit climate change, one has to believe that most coral systems in the world may well disappear.
The report's 39-page summary highlighted 5 ways people are negatively impacting biodiversity, including turning forests, wetlands and grasslands into cities, a third of the world's fish stocks being overfished, permitting climate change by burning of fossil fuels, polluting land and water, and invasive species crowding out native plant and animal species. The findings are not just about saving plants and animals, but about preserving a world that's becoming harder for humans to live in.
If we cannot halt climate change or halt the loss of biodiversity, we will threaten food security, we will threaten water security, we will threaten human health. And therefore I think governments are now recognising if they don't start to deal with climate change and biodiversity, they can't meet their other elements of human well-being that are absolutely fundamental.
Fighting climate change and saving species are equally important and go hand in hand. The report indicates that many of the worst effects can be prevented by changing food growing techniques, energy production options, and adoption of strategies on how to deal with climate change and waste disposal. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Egypt has inaugurated a major infrastructure project to connect the Sinai region. The project is expected to speed up the development vision for the Sinai. It is a step the country believes would help stop militant recruitment through creating more jobs and economic opportunities for the youth. Here's Adel Makhroui with more.
When the Suez Canal was established, it connected the world, but it has separated the Sinai from the rest of the Egyptian mainland. This week, Egypt is inaugurating 4 underground tunnels that are going to be the main connecting vessels to the development in this area. The tunnels stretch for 5.2 kilometers, 70 meters below the sea level under the Suez Canal. 2 of them are here in Ismailia city, with a total capacity of 4,000 vehicles per hour. With this massive, unprecedented connectivity to the Sinai, Egypt expects to speed up the development in the region, which has for years suffered from militant insurgency.
Development anywhere pushes all ills away. As a representative of Ismailia, I must say the projects launched today will fight tourism. By connecting Ismailia to Sinai, this area will be an international gateway from Sinai to the world. Any investor needs roads to cross to connect.
To prevent any possible breach from the terrorist groups in North Sinai, each tunnel has been equipped with 10 vehicle X-ray gates. Since 2014, Egypt has launched a massive development vision for the Suez Canal region. By the year 2020, 1,000 projects will have been completed with a total of $47 billion in investments.
The population of the governorship surrounding the Suez Canal is 6% of Egypt. The investments poured in this area until 2020 are about 20% of the entire country's investments, which reflects the magnitude of the state's will to develop this region. This is one of the main areas that Egypt's future depends on.
New cities are getting constructed on the east of the Suez Canal shore. Beside business, the tunnels are expected to increase the influx of visitors to the Red Sea resorts in South Sinai, giving a domestic push to the tourism sector. Adel Makhroui, CGTN, from the Suez Canal city, Ismailia, Egypt.
Thousands of people in remote areas of storm-lashed Mozambique have been left homeless. Many small communities have been completely destroyed. Transportation remains a big challenge as relief agencies struggle to reach out to the affected population scattered across villages. Our reporter Daniel Arap Moy is in Pemba and brings us more in this report.
Mozambique is currently dealing with the aftermath of Cyclone Kenneth in the country's northern coastal region of Pemba. According to the country's National Institute of Disaster Management, 38 people have so far been confirmed dead. More than 20,000 others are reportedly without proper shelter, with nearly 30,000 homeless. Mario Alima is one among many Mozambicans who have been affected by the devastating effect of Cyclone Kenneth. Halima is trying to rebuild her home after the cyclone, but she says it's a daunting task that requires resources which she does not have.
The floodwater came and filled my entire house, and now we're trying to fix the damage, but it will take time because we don't have much as a family.
Cyclone Kenneth left a trail of destruction here in Pemba. Hundreds of families, just like Halima, are trying to salvage the little left, but resources seem hard to come by. Many people here in Pemba are trying to return to a semblance of daily life amid the destruction. but with nothing much to start with.
I have nothing much left. The cyclone destroyed everything, and with 7 children, life is simply a daily struggle. If anyone can help, I will be grateful.
Many of the roads in the area have been grounded and remains in bad shape, with flights to the region grounded. Relief agencies are concerned about communities they have lost contact with, especially given the challenge of transportation in hard-to-reach areas of Cabo Delgado. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN, Pemba, Mozambique.
1.5 billion Muslims will begin their month-long fast this week. Ramadan is the holiest month in the Islamic lunar calendar. In Egypt, colorful celebrations are held every year to welcome the month of devotion and forgiveness. CGTN's Cairo correspondent Adel Mahroui has more.
Strings of colored paper have been stretched all over the country as Egyptians prepare to welcome Ramadan. For those who don't know it, it's like 30 days of celebrating Christmas. Ahmed Salah is putting the final touches to his Ramadan lantern. It will decorate the entrance of the garage he works at. His friends have come to help out. To them, it's a joyful task, but more importantly, it's their present to the entire neighborhood.
Decorations are among Ramadan's masters. I have been doing it here at my garage for 5 years and back at home since I was a kid. Back then, the whole family would gather together. Today, I either buy ready-made decorations or if I have time, I gather my friends and we make them together. It's more fun. People then come to admire these decorations and take selfies here.
In Ramadan, Muslims' fast is a deprivation from food and drinks from dawn till sunset. When they break their fast, it's usually a meal to share with relatives and friends.
Everything in Ramadan is nice. Ramadan sweets are the best. It's the month when we meet those who have been away for some time. It's the time we put our dispute aside, cook delicious meals and enjoy our company.
And an Egyptian house must be well decorated for these gatherings. It's why business for shop owners like this one booms as the holy month approaches.
I've inherited this job from my grandfather, which he started in 1948. Ramadan is the best month in the year. It's full of work and sales. These decorations are how people enjoy this month.
I try to preserve the Ramadan spirit I have been raised on, so I get a lot of decorations and set up lights like these in my garden. All my family enjoys it, and they wait for it every year.
In Ramadan, Cairo gets busier at night.
I love Ramadan outings. They start after midnight. Usually with friends, we go to Old Cairo and enjoy outdoor celebrations that are held in this neighborhood.
From sunset till dawn, this is the time people enjoy the most before they start their fast the next day. The Egyptian capital never sleeps. In Ramadan, however, it becomes livelier than ever. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Nigeria's Kano state has been organizing a mass wedding that was to take place just before the onset of Ramadan. Held at Kano's Central Mosque, 1,500 couples took part in the ceremony before the month-long fasting period. City authorities included the Emir and Sharia police congregated at the mosque to oversee proceedings. Each bride was given a dowry of about $55. Governor Abdullahi Ganduje revealed that over $80,000 was spent on sponsoring the mass wedding, as well as providing newlyweds with basic furniture. The state periodically organizes free mass weddings to encourage people to marry. The northern state has the highest divorce rate in Nigeria, which officials attribute to poverty, unemployment, and retrogressive cultural practices.
Chirping of birds, sounds of whispering trees, burbling of streams. When sunlight sets the forest's leaves aglow, and waterfall surges down from the mountain, we see and hear the Earth's wondrous beauty. The Earth is meant to be appreciated, and the life of its inhabitants deserves our endless exploration. Come with CGTN to listen and see, in chorus of life, to marvel at nature and life.
And let's now go to Rama for a look at the day's business news. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. Kenya's largest bank by assets has its eyes on acquisitions in Rwanda and the DRC. And South African Airways will soon be flying directly from Joburg to Guangzhou.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor, to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant, and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's start in the financial services sector. KCB Group has announced plans to buy a bank in Rwanda and one in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, the bank, however, did not reveal the identity of the two banks that are being considered for purchase or the time frame in which these acquisitions will occur. It also does plan to open a representative office in China as part of efforts to grow trade links between China and East Africa. Since the capping of commercial lending rates in 2016, banks have revealed several different strategies like consolidation to reinforce their market share. In April, KCB offered to acquire the bourse-listed National Bank of Kenya. It proposed to make that acquisition through a share swap of 10 ordinary shares of NBK for every 1 ordinary share of KCB. The Indian telecommunications firm Bharti Airtel Limited is preparing to kick off the IPO of its Africa unit. Through this, the company could raise approximately $1 billion. Airtel is aiming to start trading in June, and it's looking for an equity valuation of about $5 billion. The valuation and the listing date could vary depending on investor demand and market sentiment. The company's shares increased by just 0.2% in Mumbai, opposing the 1% decline on the Bombay Stock Exchange benchmark. The business currently has operations in 14 African markets. That includes Kenya and Tanzania within East Africa. It's also present in Nigeria and in Ghana. On to aviation now. South African Airways, one of the continent's larger carriers, has announced that it will be launching direct flights between Johannesburg and Guangzhou this year in September. This is expected to offer customers access to the heart of China's export-led manufacturing sector. According to the company, this is a plan that's been implemented to enhance the available routes network. This will be the only carrier operating a direct service, providing the shortest travel time on a non-stop basis between those two cities. Guangzhou is situated in Guangdong province, and it is the center of China's export-led manufacturing sector. It's often described as the world's manufacturing hub. On to North Africa now. The deep and comprehensive free trade area deal between Tunisia and the EU is coming under fire. Some experts in Tunisia say the EU wants its companies to get open access to the Tunisian market and aims to impose its norms, standards and procedures. As CGTN's Adam Chachi now reports, such an agreement, they say, would worsen socioeconomic problems in the North African state.
Economists at the Tunisian Confederation of Businessmen UTICA have called on the government to stop the negotiations on the Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Agreement DCFTA and prepare an alternative to this agreement proposed by the European side.
The DCFTA is not a problem of tariff barriers, but rather a new corporate project imposed by the EU. It could cause regression of real GDP by 0.5% if there is a total trade freedom, and by 1.5% in case of partial freedom. We'll end up with more unemployment and worsening of the trade deficit.
The Tunisian Institute of Competitiveness and Quantitative Studies has revealed that the expected gain in economic growth is differentiated from one activity to another, insofar as there are activities that will suffer and disappear completely.
Only 3 sectors will develop, specifically those of vegetable oil and olive oil, business services and fruits and vegetables, which will aggravate the deficit of the trade balance that will decrease by -2% to -3%, 1% in case of total freedom. We don't have the means to face giants.
The Central Council of the Tunisian Union of Agriculture and Fisheries, UTAP, has categorically rejected the signing of the DCFTA with the European Union in its current version.
The rehabilitation of the agricultural sector is a national priority that cannot be linked to the issues of partnership with the European Union. Agriculture employs 500,000 people in Tunisia, hence they need to take it into account the sensitivity of this vital sector and its problems.
The Tunisian Minister of Agriculture noted that the current situation of the country requires deepening consultation, extending them to all stakeholders to clarify the issue of the place of the DCFTA in Tunisia and the advantages it offers. The Tunisian Premier's economic advisors have affirmed that there is a refusal and reservation with regard to the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement with the EU among trade unions, employers' organizations and the parliament, which explains the length of the negotiations and their complexity. Aden Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Right then, on to the movie business. The juggernaut that is Avengers Endgame just continues its domination at the global box office in the second week in a row. At this point, the blockbuster has crossed the $2 billion mark in record time. It's effectively dethroned, or should we say sunk, Titanic, as the second highest grossing film ever worldwide. According to Walt Disney, the movie has grossed $145.8 million from North American theaters and another $282 million elsewhere around the world. So the total at this point is $2.2 billion in takings. Endgame is one of 5 movies to ever reach that magic number. Not accounting for inflation, it is now second worldwide, only to Avatar's record of $2.8 billion. And fingers crossed it's going to smash right through that record in no time. One last story for you. Swedish multinational furniture retailer IKEA has opened its first store in central Paris, in the Madeleine district. The area is popular with tourists and it's close to a lot of historical landmarks. IKEA plans to invest over $440 million in France in the next 3 years as it builds up its new city centre stores in the country. Here's CGTN's Terry Wangari with more.
The world's biggest furniture retailer is known for its vast self-service out-of-town stores. But it's transforming its business model to cater more for consumers who would rather order online and have items sent to their doors.
It is a way in a smaller space for us to be closer to people, to offer the full IKEA range. You don't want to bring your sofa with you, so we don't have it in the stock here. But it's a new way for us of interacting with the customers. Would this be successful, we will be able to bring it not only to more places in Paris, but to other places in France, in the US, in Japan, in China, in India. So it's an important test for the total IKEA.
IKEA employs around 10,000 people in France, where its sales rose 3% in the 2017 to 2018 fiscal year to nearly $3 billion. The Madeleine branch has hired 140 new workers. The Paris outlet is 4 times smaller than IKEA's typical blue box megastores, which are usually located on cheaper land on the edge of cities. So the question is, can such a city centre branch work in Paris?
What I will follow up when I look at Madeleine is how many homes do we improve here, and can we, in the white spots of Paris, can we be as relevant for people as we are in the suburbs. And we know for sure, even if there are some people are more affluent in the city centre, most people live in a small space. Most people don't have endless of money. So therefore we think we will be relevant.
The opening of the Madeleine store comes as Paris grapples with the yellow vest anti-government protests. However, many Parisians welcomed the new store, with some hoping for more across Paris.
For me, the convenience is the quickness. I don't have to take a ton of transport to go to the store, and then if I buy a lot of things, it's also simpler to go back home.
Well, it's convenient. They have so much. I love the fact that IKEA has a lot of affordable things that look good. And I'm always buying stuff online from IKEA, and I'm just happy that they finally came to Paris. And I think I heard that they're going to New York as well, which is really impressive. So, yeah.
France is IKEA's third largest market after Germany and the United States. Global sales reached around $43.6 billion last year. The new Madeleine branch hopes to prove that the firm's new business model can work not just for Paris, but for busy cities across the globe. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
I'll leave you there for the time being, but I'll be back at the top of the hour. We'll be looking at South African banks when we come back. They're up in arms because the ruling party is introducing a regulation that might force them to fund coal power plants. How big a threat is that? We'll find out live from Johannesburg at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, though, back to Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. Emerging scientists from 18 African countries tour China's top universities and industrial parks.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
From new age farming to robotic science, that's what young science workers from 18 African countries are interacting with as they tour China's top universities and industrial parks this week. They are sampling China's fast advances in tech, and the participating scientists say there is one thing any country looking to develop must work on. CGTN's Sunye has more.
Vertical farming. It allows farmers to grow more crops in less space. And that's what caught Ernest Pomdu's attention as he, along with more than 20 young African science workers, toured one of Beijing's signature science industrial parks.
The technology is needed because, like I mentioned, agriculture is one of the core sectors of our economy. But then the problem we have is we're still dependent on traditional forms of agriculture. So, like we visited this vertical farming. Is one form of technology that is new and needs to be tried, especially because of the benefits it brings.
He says he will make vertical farming technology one of his policy suggestions when he goes back. Latifatu Muhammad says that for her country's science sector to boom, it needs proper funding alignments, like China.
What the developed countries have done is to empower science and technology in their country, where there is a fund that supports research and development. And if it's the first step that a country will have to embark on to invest into science and technology. And I think that is what China has done.
Both agree that the key to scientific growth is raising talent.
Much as we have a low base, I think what China did was from our perspective, was first of all to grow the human capital, and the human capital kind of is the base for sustained growth.
And when the group visited China's prestigious Tsinghua University, they asked that big question: how can they effectively nurture talent?
China and African countries are all developing countries. We have similar problems, and how best to coach talent is the most important. China's fast advances in science have shown that its ways with talent works. For one, we heavily invest in not only high-level education, but also education at all levels. And we are happy to share some of our experience with them.
The African visitors will head to other top research facilities, looking for lessons as well as opportunities in cooperation.
Africa needs more roads, more houses, bridges, railroads. But I think that Africa also needs to apply more technology and innovation in its developments so that it can make leap forward developments in future. And I think in this regard, China certainly has a lot to offer. I think China is willing to share our development experience with Africa.
Sun Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
In India, animal lovers can now spend more quality time with their pets. During a special outing, there are bitings from a customized food menu in the country's first pet-friendly cafe. Let's take a look.
The pet cafe known as Canine Restaurant is found in the southern side of India. It was launched by enthusiastic canine lovers who want to spend more time with their pets while eating.
I'm really glad that this happened in Mangalore. And I can tell that this is a stress-buster place for the dog lovers, and I do visit at times, and I just love spending time with dogs and food as well.
Other than the pets allowed policy at Canine Restaurant, the cafe has a pet training school for the animals. It also provides spa services for both cats and dogs while their owners enjoy their meals.
We have a special raw diet menu for the pets too. So in this moment, when you're coming up with a family, you have that option to leave your pets in the down, and you can have your food on the restaurant too.
There's also a dedicated play space for the animals and access to accessories like dog leashes, collars, treats and grooming products. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
And coming up in your sports news. World Marathon record holder Eliud Kipchoge to make a fresh attempt at breaking the 2-hour marathon barrier.
Africa, where champions are made